By the end of this video, you're going to have a clear understanding of what Dharma is and why most people never get to achieve it. Dharma is in and of itself something that most of us are oblivious to because we're living in karma and not in Dharma. So what is Dharma and what does it have to do with how we create, how we live in this world? Let's get into it. A simple definition of Dharma is your soul's path, the right way to live according to your soul's purpose. Okay, your duty, your role, your things that you're naturally good at. And that doesn't mean a job. Okay, you can express your Dharma, and we'll go more into this by fulfilling it in other ways that aren't aligning with your career, but you cannot deny your Dharma in this life, although most of us will because we're living in karma, but your natural truth and the way that you're meant to express your soul. If you've seen some of my other videos, how to find your soul's purpose, these are workarounds to sort of see what is your soul's purpose, what's your Dharma, and are you actually living out this truth? In the Vedic teachings, following your Dharma means that you're living with integrity, you're honoring your spiritual nature, and you're fulfilling what your soul came here to learn. Okay, you're basically living with your higher self in a cosmic alignment, we'll call it. And other religions call this other things, but think of it as being on the path of your higher consciousness, your higher self, what you're supposed to be doing and why most people are not fulfilling that. Most people live from karma. So karma is that familiar old cycle, and I won't go too much into it into this video, but it's repeating emotional and generational trauma, emotional wounds. It's living with the same fears, survival strategies, and the same limiting beliefs. And this is why a lot of people do not actually attain Dharma, because Dharma requires a level of self-awareness, awakening, courage to break out of these societal norms that you were given. It's the willingness to step into the unknown. But here's the fun fact about that. With you stepping into the unknown externally, what you're actually doing is you're stepping into the known of yourself, as above, so below. Our entire world comes from within. So if you know yourself, okay, and we'll get into this in the video, if you know your soul, you can take the next step to step into your Dharma. But Dharma requires self awareness, which is extraordinarily rare, especially in today's day and age. To walk into Dharma, okay, Dharma is not just rules, it's to walk in cosmic alignment. I know that might sound a little cheesy, but it really is. It's questioning your conditioning. What was I born into? And am I repeating the cycle? Was I told that these things are bad or are they actually bad? It's stepping out of your family's story. A lot of us carry generational trauma and wounds, and maybe we're the cycle breakers, the black sheep of the family, breaking ancestral patterns. Maybe you have a long line of history of people that have struggled with a variety of things. It's choosing, despite those circumstances, to walk your own path and following your intuition, your gut. And it's facing parts of yourself that you want to avoid. And this is where the karma comes in, right? And how to break those karmic cycles. And to allow Dharma to come in, you have to actually live in a state of kind of like, I'll call it faith, saying like, hey, I really don't know what's going to happen, but ultimately I trust my gut. I trust that it's going to be okay. And what if I fail? So what? Because a lot of times Dharma is blocked by fear. What will people think? What will my community think if I do this? I cannot leave my comfort zone. What if I don't have money? My family's not going to approve. It's too late for me. A lot of people think that, they've reached a certain point in their lives, they're comfortable, they have a career, they have the kids, they have the house. Dharma actually happens later in life. Okay. And a lot of people who are living from survival, not from purpose, okay, they get to experience their Dharma when they've reached a certain age, when they feel, and this is a shame because if we didn't feel like this, we'd reach it younger. When people feel they paid their dues, sometimes you see, especially with men, they are doing things out of duty and they're waking up, they're going to work, they're providing for the kids, and they wake and they go, and it becomes daunting for them because they don't know how to break the cycle. They think that they're living from a higher purpose because they're providing for those around them, but it might not be their soul's purpose, okay, their Dharma. Signs that you're getting blocked from living in Dharma is people that are stuck in survival modes, abusive relationships, generational trauma, financial fear, lack of emotional support, people that are kind of making you into those boxes. I talk a lot on my page about invisible boxes. So, our job is to figure out where we belong, what serves our higher self, what serves our alignment path. And as I mentioned, Dharma is not achieved young. This is why older people sometimes who feel that they've earned the ability to express Dharma might step into that alignment later in life. But even if you don't, and even if you're aware a little bit younger, Dharma usually begins activating after several life stages, but also several life cycles. Okay. If you know the concept of reincarnation and you understand what we take from previous lives, it becomes a little bit more easy to understand just how hard it is to work and walk in Dharma. But if you're not into that and you're not talking about reincarnation, just by walking in Dharma in one lifetime, you have to experience things and you have to burn through that karma. We'll talk about karma in another video. So it's not like you're going to have a 5-year-old necessarily, although it could be, that's walking in Dharma. Maybe they are, reincarnated in like the Dalai Lama and things like that. But for the average person, Dharma is going to activate well after you're 30, where you've experienced a Saturn return, a nodal return. These are all astrology terms that we're talking about here, midlife transits. Sometimes people have spiritual awakenings through loss, a divorce, a death, an accident. Something happens that collapses their old identity. And this goes along with the spiritual awakening where people might be like, what am I living for? It makes them stop when tragedy happens for some people at certain points in their life. It makes them stop and say, what am I really living for? What's going on here? And the cool thing that I've noticed about people in their 30s and sometimes in their 20s, which is pretty young, I'll get those stories on TikTok where people are like, I was a corporate attorney working, 100 hours a week. And then they just drop everything and they like sell bananas in like the coast of Costa Rica. And I'm like, and they're happy. And they're like, yeah, I didn't want to do this and I wanted to do that. And again, I'm not saying it's a job necessarily. We're going to get into that in a little bit, but it is meaning of your soul's purpose. It's a lifelong journey and it's not just one event. Even though the catalyst might be for you that you had a tragic event to make you have a spiritual awakening to realign you, where you're like, do I want to die working for a corporation, working 120 hours a week? Or am I really good at something else that makes me happy and fulfilled? And even though that one event might be the catalyst, Dharma is a continual journey, okay? It's walking in your Dharma unfolds over time, and how that's going to be expressed is going to look different for everyone. If someone is maybe a natural healer, that could be expressed in a lot of different career choices. They could be a therapist, they could be a nurse, they could be a doctor, they could be a Reiki healer. It's not pigeonholing you into one career choice. How you want to play out that Dharma is ultimately going to be up to you once you're aware of it. And that I think is one of the most challenging things. That right there is one of the most challenging things. And as I mentioned, Dharma is achieved, in my opinion, across multiple lifetimes, depending on where you're holding, because you could spend an entire lifetime trying to get out of a cycle. You could try to clear, generational trauma. You could come down here and say, in this life, I need to clear this generational trauma. Another life could be, I need to learn a service. I need to learn how to love. And if you believe in reincarnation and the concept of moksha, which is your soul's liberation, or nirvana, some people call it, Dharma is difficult for most of us to achieve. And when you do achieve it, and when you're balanced and you're living in your soul's purpose, it's like the soul's graduation. Okay, we'll call it. And I don't want you to think that I'm living in my Dharma and now I'm going to get beamed up to the clouds. Okay. Like I said, it's a lifelong journey and a path. And the beauty of achieving your full, like walking in the path of Dharma, is that you're listening to your soul and you're sharing your light with the world. Okay. Oh, I figured out this thing that I'm really good at that makes me feel good. It's uplifting me and I've rearranged my whole life to achieve it. All right. So share it with the world. Share it with other people. The world, in my opinion, needs more spiritually elevated people to share their gifts. Because what I've seen on my end with meeting with people one on one is these amazing individuals who have gone on this spiritual journey. They've gone here, they've gone there, they're at the precipice of this breakthrough. And then it's like, okay, but now what? You climb the mountain, now you want everybody else to see the view with you. At least that's what I feel, but that might just be my dharma speaking, who knows. So who achieves their dharma, right? We've talked about breaking generational curses. We've talked about cycles and trauma, and it might take you a few incarnations to reach it. But generally speaking, if you're the type of person that is seeking spiritual truth, if you're questioning everything, if you are healing yourself, breaking those generational cycles, if you're rejecting the conditioning that was given to you, this is one of the hardest things because we might not even realize the conditioning that we're given. If you're committing to growth, awakening spiritually, and embracing discomfort, sometimes, and this is what I said in the beginning, self-awareness to realize what we've been conditioned to believe. And it's not just about other people, by the way. It could essentially be about ourselves. These are my notes. It could be about ourselves, the conditioning. I'm not worthy of love. I can't do that. It's not in my path. Maybe next lifetime, maybe this time. Okay. And attaining that. So we're going to go into the next part. Hold on. I am not a master YouTube editor. If you see this video on YouTube and you're like, why is it so choppy? I'm just here to teach some information and put it up on YouTube. I don't really know. Maybe one day we'll afford a good editor. Um, but let's talk about Dharma is how you work, right? And a job is where you work, and maybe how to combine these things practically and how you can live your Dharma in many careers because it's about your expression in this world. So, Dharma being the vibration that makes you feel good and feels right, even when it's hard, it's what energizes you, it's what makes you feel aligned. It's the inner workings of who you are and how you're going to express it. And that means essentially that Dharma for you could have quite a bit of past. Now, even if you're not working in a field of Dharma, because like I mentioned, that's pretty rare. Okay. Even if you're not fully expressing your Dharma through your career, you can do so in other ways. Maybe you are a community organizer. Maybe you're meant to start some sort of charity, and that charity becomes your Dharma and your life's work. And maybe that charity is funded, or at least the ability to run that charity is funded through something else. Now, there's a little bit of a debate with that because ultimately, when you are fully in your Dharma, the idea of anything that doesn't serve that path comes as a rejection and disgust. I experienced this myself with ending a few businesses and making that transition where I had these businesses, they were making money, they were doing great, but they weren't aligning fully to what I felt was an honest expression of my Dharma. And I didn't know this was happening for me, but I was like, oh, I don't want to go back to that business, but it makes money, but I didn't like it. And it was kind of like just naturally, I don't want to say disgusting me to go back to these things, but it really was. So if you guys have questions, let me know, leave it in the comments. And I'd love to hear your take on Dharma and if you feel you're living your purpose by walking in or with Dharma.